Thanks for coming back after the coffee break. My name is Franziska Katterbach, and I'm the president of Khiron Life Sciences in Europe. And Khiron Life Sciences, for those who don't know us yet, we're a global medicine cannabis company, and we have cooperations in Latin America and in Europe. And in Europe, we started in 2019, and so far we have an asset-light model. So my topic for today is legalization in Europe, and I would like to give some spotlights on recent developments and also on market opportunities. I hope I'm not too repetitive because Peter did a great speech already on medical cannabis in Germany, then Finn. So maybe I do it quick and dirty, and then it gives us enough time to either grab another coffee, or when you have questions, feel just free to jump in. We can have it very interactive such that nobody falls asleep here. All right, so what I want to cover, it's just briefly, let's take a giant step back. What different types of cannabis exist? What are the core regulations? Then I would like to speak about some medical cannabis markets, how they've been developed in Europe so far, a little bit on the regulations behind it and some numbers. And then finally, a little bit of an outlook on recreational cannabis in Europe. So generally, we distinguish between these four areas of cannabis. We have the medical cannabis, which is like a narcotic, and you get it via a script. Then we have the recreational cannabis. So far, none of the European countries have legalized it yet, not fully. Then we have novel food, and then you have cosmetics. And depending on what promise you make with your product and what presentation, you can touch various different regulations. So medical cannabis, very easy. Lots of countries have legalized medical cannabis. It really depends on how broad it's been legalized, who can prescribe, if it's reimbursed. But as you see, there are lots of countries that haven't legalized yet on paper. But it's also very important to notice that just a law doesn't grant access, and this is why I would later focus on what do we have to do as an industry in order to grant the access, and why is maybe the market not growing as fast as we thought it could, or as it definitely could. Then we have the cosmetics. Cosmetics are usually topical products which you apply to your skin. We have cosmetics regulation, the European treaty which applies, but we also have very different national regulations. So we have it widely accessible in Europe, but it really depends on what is allowed and what not. Then we have the novel food, because based on the European Commission, who decided in 2019 that novel food is required, an application. And just recently, lots of novel food applications came in, but were halted because they were concerns about the safety data, which now has to be produced by the various applicants. So this will still take some time. So far, no novel food application for CBD went through. And we have the recreational cannabis. And maybe as a one product can pretty much be anything depending on how you present it. If we would look at a CBD only spray, obviously if it's high dosage and just CBD, and you say, okay, this will have this and this therapeutic effect, it will be medical cannabis. If you tell your customers, oh no, it just makes you look better and please apply it to your mouth but don't swallow it, it can very well be a cosmetic product. If you say spray it on your skin, it will again be a cosmetic. If you say use it and swallow it and it tastes so good, you will be a novel food. And if you just say when the legalization is through that it's just a fun product like beer, it can be a recreational product. So really depending on how you present it, you can be in multiple jurisdictions. Now to make it very easy, so what is required from seed to patient? And now I want to give just a few spotlights on what you have to do and what has to happen until from here, the patient at the very end gets the product. I mean, here it looks very easy, but let's start with the production. We heard about it a lot. So production has been governed by GACP, and maybe as a bit of a background to speak about all the regulations, we cannot fill only this full day, but I think a whole semester at university, because it combines, it's an intersection of agriculture, it's about engineering, and it's about pharmaceuticals. So starting here, the grow has to take place under GACP conditions, which can very well be outside. It can be outdoor. You don't have to necessarily grow indoor just to comply with GACP. It just gets a little harder later to get a standardized product. So if we start with GACP, you can have a beautiful plant, but still doesn't yet qualify for a medicinal product. More has to happen. Depending on which regulator you're talking and dealing with, GMP, good manufacturing practices, kicks in at different stages. So usually you would say once you really produce the cannabis, maybe in the growing stage or at the cutting or at the trimming, there the GMP regulations kick in. GMP, maybe to also take a step back here, GMP is never something that is related to your product. GMP is related to your facility. It says the facility complies with the good manufacturing standards, but it doesn't mean that your product coming out of that facility is still a legal product. More has to happen. So once you have your certification for your facility, you now have to start grow a standardized product, which means before you go to the registration in each country, this is the moment where you log in, where you frame your product. Before it's just cannabis and it comes out of a EU GMP qualified facility, but it's still not a product which you can downstream in the various markets. So more has to happen here, because then you register your product, and the different countries have different regulations. For example, in Germany, we have the German monograph, which you have to apply, and many other European countries also cross-refer the German monograph, but this is just the basis. This is just the bare minimum which you have to comply with, and then national regulations come on top. So it's more or less safe to say that once you comply with the German monograph, you can also distribute your product in different countries, but there are also exemptions, because congratulations, you can bring a product to Germany, doesn't mean you can also bring it to Poland, because they have different regulations which come on top of the monograph. So in Germany, we have other regulations which come on top of the monograph. For example, if you irradiate your product, you need an AMRAD V, which now takes up to 9 months because regulators, the applications are piling up. So this is coming on top of it. Once you did that, you have to bring the product, you have locked in your specs, and after that you have to bring this more or less the same product with a little bit of variance each and every time. This requires, as Peter already said, an import and an export permit, which are correspondingly. So you first apply for the import permit, and with that you apply for the export permit. And only if they match, you can do the next step, which is here. Then you can ship the product. But, and this is why I'm super against measuring the markets by size of import. You can import as many products if you want. You will not sell one if you don't focus on the last 2 stages. And this is where we as Khiron are very focused on, because we have a large market in Germany and other markets. The population, if we apply the 1% rule, the market should be there. And Excel tells you the market can be there. But why is it not there? And I think because it's not a self-selling product, and the industry is also not self-building. If we in this room don't build this together and put efforts into it, we can ship as many products, make them EU GMP compliant, but still a patient will not have access. So you have to gather a script. And here we have an example of a German script. It's also very important, because how can the doctor know about your product? So you have to have an active sales force. We're allowed. In Germany it is allowed. In UK it's not allowed, for example. You have to train the doctors. And guess what? A doctor has been visited by so many different LPs. So you have to help the doctor guide them through the jungle of products. Because in Germany, for example, we have already so many products on the market. It's really more or less a jungle for a doctor to find their way through it. Isolates, extracts, full spectrum extracts, dried flower. There's so many problems you have to tackle that we already hear from doctors who say, it's too much. I don't understand it anymore. It has been easy, but it's not easy anymore. So You have to cover the doctors and also help them how to go through the application process in Germany for patients. Because for me, the end game has to be that medical cannabis has to be paid by the insurance. And there shouldn't be a way around that just because you didn't tick this box right and then it's refused. So this is also, if we as an industry don't guide the doctors through it, it's not going to happen. Nobody is doing this for us. So this is why we, with our sales force, are very, very focused on doctor education, data. This is what's needed. And then it's still not done. Still the product is not. Even if your patient went through all of this, they got their reimbursement coverage, but then he has to find the pharmacy because the pharmacist is also part of the game. So you have to make sure, in Germany we have more or less 20,000 independent pharmacies. So better make sure that you have a good sales force who's only focused on the pharmacies, because you want it to make it as easy as possible for your patient that when they go to the pharmacy, they get their product directly. Because what you will see here on the German and the script, and it's not different in other jurisdictions, the doctor, I call him the keeper. He decides which product, which LP, how much. And there is no chance that the pharmacist can say, well, I don't have the Khiron product, but I have something else and it's more or less the same. I substitute. This is impossible. So this script has to be invalidated and then rewritten. So this is why you want to make sure that once you convinced your keeper, the doctor, that then the pharmacist can easily dispense your product. And pharmacists also take care of what's the shelf life of your product, because obviously they wouldn't want to buy a product that is about to expire, which they then carry the inventory risk. So all of this to show you how easy it is in this industry, quote unquote, and what problems you have to tackle in between. Maybe now I would like to go a little bit more into the countries, and quite naturally I would like to start with Germany. In Germany it's still the most mature market. We almost have, if we would apply the 1% rule, we should have around 800,000 patients. I think the number is varying right now. We have 80,000, so there's 1 0 missing in the scale. 80 to 100. But just recently, we heard from Dr. Franjo Grotenhamer, who should be known to everyone. He sees the potential of medical patients even at 1.6 million in Germany. And I think that's not unrealistic because the 1% rule comes out of Canada. Canada doesn't have reimbursement. So obviously it's not that easy for patients to get it. So they could easier go to a dispensary and get the product for cheaper. So if we look, for example, at Israel, I guess the percentage rate is there at 4% of the population. So there the number gets bigger and bigger. So why is it still not there? I guess for a pharmaceutical and a narcotic product, which is Champions League, you cannot get more regulations than for a magistrial, which is a narcotic. There is not more you can get. We had in 2021 almost 9,000 kilograms of medical cannabis that was sold in pharmacies, like sold, not shipped, sold. So this is a huge number if you compare that to the 6,000 kilograms, which were the year before. And if we do the math, and now Axel could help, if we just say, okay, we forecast the 1.6 million potential, and we see what these patients already used, the number is at 180 tons a year of medical cannabis to be used just in Germany alone. How do we get there? So for now, lots of companies import through Canada or the other jurisdictions. We heard it from Peter. So we are mostly covered by imports. Our law, and I think that's a decisive factor why Germany is far advanced than other European countries, because any doctor can prescribe, very important. There is no limitation for what it can be prescribed, and also generally there is a reimbursement scheme. And I think these factors together make it accessible to the wider public and make the numbers in Germany larger than anywhere else. But still, fun fact of Germany is we did a survey and only 10% of the prescribers who could prescribe are prescribing yet. And I think if you take that into account, this number gets more realistic, because if only the 10% can already do 80 to 100,000, the potential is still there, and we can untap it, and we have to untap it as an industry. And this only goes with a sales force. There is no way, I mean, we would all love that there is an app and every doctor would just self-educate, but this is not the reality. Bless you. The reality is that you have to have a sales force for the whole country right now, visit the doctors, visit them again, visit them for a third time, and guide them through the jungle. And this is how we can grow the German market. The UK market, very restrictive. It was legalized in 2018. Why is the market still small? In UK, we have about only 10,000 patients. And the reason for it being is, in the UK, only medical specialists can prescribe. Indication-wise, it's quite often, but it's already limited because only the specialist within the specialty can prescribe the product, and there is no reimbursement scheme. So this means under the NHS, there is no coverage so far. UK is seen to be the largest market after Germany in 2025, and I guess it's realistic, but we have to unlock this potential here. And what happened in the UK is, because there's no NHS coverage and because the doctors cannot prescribe in their clinic, there are special clinics who are just focused on medical cannabis, like we have our Zerenia clinic in the UK, where you can be referred to by your general practitioner, and then you can get access to medical cannabis, but everything is out of pocket. And this is why in the UK, Khiron, for example, we're part of Project 2021, where we offer our medical cannabis product at a subsidized basis, because then the patients, they have to pay for the consultation at the doctor plus for the product. So to make that easier and lower the burden for them is why Project like 2021 exists. Plus the education for the doctors, because for now it's easier for a doctor to prescribe opioids. It's safer for him than to prescribe medical cannabis. And I think this in itself doesn't really work. So what we did, we have our Khiron Academy in the UK where we train the doctors, because a sales force is not possible in the UK. It's not allowed because it's a special, so you cannot do any advertisement. And this is why we have to offer it, and then they can log in into our system and then get there the information they require. Any questions so far? No? Good. Two other markets, I think of some of them already touched base. We have Poland. Poland had in 2021 only 7,000, around 7,000 patients. Products which are allowed are dried flower and extracts, but there's always been very shortages in the market, and this made it difficult for patients to access it. Another market that's quite interesting is Czech Republic. Czech Republic only had 4,000 medical cannabis patients. For now it's flower only, but the problem about Czech Republic is that they introduced a reimbursement, which is great, but it's so little in prices that it's almost prohibitive for LPs to enter this market. I need to... All right. Okay. France. Since 2020, there was a pilot program for, I guess, 3,000 patients should be started. In March 2022, it started. 700 of them would suffer from chronic pain, but it was a tender process. Only a few won it, and it was cannabis for free, which for me, from an LP perspective, is not exactly what I need. Once I spend so much money on getting my product there, to then give it for free for 2 years is not exactly what is growing the market. But we're expecting that after this pilot program, it might widen and more LPs will maybe have the chance to also get a product been paid for. In Spain, many of you might have heard, and my colleague Guillermo was talking about it, just recently set a subcommission which now looks into the medical access program. What is weird about Spain is that they have lots of legal grow, but no dispensation scheme. They have this tolerated area where people can go to social club, but it's still tolerated, doesn't mean it's legalized. So also there is a gray space still, and we're expecting, and that's the good news, and we're excited for that, by June of this year, we expect to see a draft of a law. So they kind of overtook Germany on that, like on the recreational side. Let's see how it will look like. We hope and we work with the regulators that they maybe more copy the German scheme and have it very broadly open. But I mean, I don't have my crystal ball here right now, so I cannot assess how the law will look like, but it's an exciting time. The Netherlands, I mean, Bedrocan is the product that has been on the German market for so long. Obviously, they also distribute their product in their own country. For now, it's only Bedrocan. And again, like in Spain, we have this semi-tolerated recreational use scheme, and we have some local schemes, but no full-blown recreational legalization yet. Last but not least, and I don't want to bore you on Germany, I think on Germany we just had from Finn and from Peter a very exhaustive overview. In Spain, it's still, you have the social clubs, which are in some cities more like Barcelona. You have them more accepted than in Madrid, but it's still, it's not legalized. Then we have the Netherlands. Are there going to be a role model? I don't think so. We have Luxembourg. Luxembourg is an interesting animal because it was legalizing in 2018. And so far, just recently, the minister said, well, there is no real timeline on that. So obviously, it was a huge push for the market. Yes, we're going to legalize it, but then nothing really happened. This is maybe what is missing here is Malta. Malta did a recreational legalization, but I don't count it as something for which is interesting for this industry here because they allow for self-grow and for more or less self-medication at home. And this is something where I don't think that this is a role model, and I don't perceive it as an industry if you're more or less forced to grow it yourself. I mean, good luck. It's very hard to get a stabilized product. And if we take a giant step back, that was the moment when the German regulators were suffering a heart attack after the court in Leipzig ruled in 2016 that because if you cannot afford to pay medical cannabis, patients have to be allowed to grow at home. And that was the moment when Germany did the legalization of medical cannabis and said, oh my gosh, what we want anything but not home grow. This is something which we don't want. So I'm not exactly sure how this model is going to survive. And that's it from my side, almost dead on time. Thank you for listening. Any questions, comments, or something we want to discuss together now that we have 5 minutes left?